Wrist flexibility and strength is really important, especially for handstand training, because you have so much weight on your wrists. And in order to hold a handstand for a good amount of time, your wrists have to be strong enough to hold that weight. Not to mention flexible enough to get your arms, get your shoulders directly over your wrists and make that perfect, nice, straight line that we all want. Because otherwise, you might be stuck like this. You'll have trouble. You'll have more trouble getting to that straight line if you lack the flexibility. I'll show you the 2 ways that I trained for wrist strength and flexibility in the beginning, and the ways I still do currently train wrist strength and flexibility. The first way is I would get into a frog stand, just like this. And before you ask, it doesn't matter if your knees are directly on your arms or on the outside of your arms. Although that's a good exercise, switching from the outside to the inside. The point here is that when you're in a frog stand, you're putting a lot of pressure on your wrists, on your hands. And you're also working on your balance, because it does involve some hand balancing in order not to fall back to your feet. And I remember that I would time myself and I would try to hold a frog stand for 30 seconds. That was my goal at the time, frog stand for 30 seconds. And it was pretty difficult to get to 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And I would try this a couple times a night, several times a night. And that really helped to get me used to putting pressure on my wrists, and it also improved my balance. So do your frog stands. Practice holding it for at least 30 seconds at a time. If you can't hold a frog stand for 30 seconds at a time without your wrists hurting or getting sore, well, then now you know what to work on. And the second way for strengthening your wrists and flexibility for handstand training should be really obvious. Practice your handstands against the wall. Hold your handstand against the wall. Make sure you're in that straight line. Just hold it here. You don't want to hold it there until it hurts. Especially if you're just starting to get into handstands, it could be really rough in the beginning. Just hold it until you feel that slight discomfort. Until it barely starts to hurt. You feel that discomfort, and then come back down. Stretch your wrists out. Do your stretches. Forwards, sideways, backwards. Shake them off. And just do that. Try doing that every day, a couple times a day. Don't overdo it. I can't stress that enough. If you hold it and you're forcing your hands there for too long and you're just fighting through the pain, you may think this is going to help you, but I made that mistake in the beginning one time, and I wasn't able to train for about 4 or 5 days after that. And I noticed it's better to train more frequently when it comes to skill training and stretching, rather than train more intensely. So don't think of training too intense when it comes to this type of training for your wrists. Think of training frequently. Do a little bit here and there throughout the day, rather than going really, really hard just on one session. So holding the frog stand and holding your handstand against the wall are going to get your wrists adjusted to holding pressure directly on top of them. But there's another way that we must strengthen our wrists, and especially increase the flexibility. And this way is by leaning our shoulders in front of our wrists. So let's say we're in this position, we lean forward. The further that we lean our shoulders in front of our wrists, the more pressure that you're going to feel. So look at my wrist. The bottom will even start coming off the ground. My palm will start coming off the ground. And that's intense. And that was my point of discomfort, a slight discomfort, the point that I want to try to hold it at. And when it comes to this type of stretching, putting your shoulders far in front of your wrists, I don't hold it for as long as a duration as, let's say, holding a frog stand, which we're trying to aim for 30 seconds, because this is much more intense for the wrists. So I do much shorter holds when it comes to that style of stretching. So I'll hold it for about 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds max. So right here, I'll get in this plank position. I'll push my shoulder blades away from the spine, protracting them. Really getting a good support up here. Push your shoulder blades down and away from the spine, down and away. Even when you're doing your frog stance, don't be relaxed in the shoulders like this, but think of pushing your shoulders down and out. So from a push-up position, lean. And that's intense. And we would do that, shake our wrists off, shake our hands, stretch our wrists. And then I'll do that a few more times and give it a break. You can practice this stretch starting off here on your knees, just leaning forward. Or you can make it a little more difficult by getting to that full plank position and working on your lean. One thing you may notice is that if you take your hands and you rotate them outwards, externally rotate them slightly, there will be less pressure on your lean, less pressure on your wrists. You'll notice you can lean further. Without it hurting as much. The problem with this is once you press into the handstand can be harder to balance with your hands out to the side like this, directly on the floor, as opposed to how we're normally used to balancing a handstand with our hands straight ahead. So let me press with my hands to the side, just to demonstrate. That press was terrible, I know. But when I got into the handstand, yeah, it feels weird balancing that way. It's different. So I would recommend stretching both ways. Sure, get your wrist stronger and more flexible, externally rotated, but also work on stretching them and getting used to putting that pressure with them straight ahead. Don't just change the directions of your hands because you don't want to do the work and adjust to that discomfort, because you will adjust and they will get stronger. Let me try a press with my hands straight ahead. Yeah, that felt better. Not at first, but once I started pressing, it felt better. I have much more control and balance with my hands straight ahead. So do those 3 stretches. Frog stand, 30 seconds, holding the handstand against the wall, about 10 to 15 seconds, or just until that point where it feels uncomfortable, then come back down. And then the stretch, the lean, leaning your shoulders in front of your wrists. Those 3 are going to make your wrists really flexible and really strong for your handstands. Make your handstands look better too.